My name is Claire, and I was 32 when I learned that 8 years of invisible labor could be recalled in a single afternoon. Not with a shout. Not with a slammed door. With a manila folder, a postage stamp, and a filing date that had already passed while they were still deciding what to wear. I want to be clear about what this story is. It is not a revenge fantasy. There are no poisoned drinks, no burned bridges lit for spectacle, no cinematic monologue delivered through tears. It is the sound of a machine stopping because one person stopped oiling it. The machine in this case was a family. My family. They ran a small real estate portfolio, 4 rental units in a college town, held in an LLC that bore my brother's name like a vanity plate on a car he had not paid for. For 8 years, I had been the one who found the tenants, signed the leases, unclogged the drains at midnight, and balanced the books. My brother Derek held the title of managing member. I held a city property management certification I had earned 6 years earlier, a certification his name could not legally carry because he had never sat for the exam. They knew this. They had known it for years. What they did not know was that I had already filed a change of designated manager with the City Licensing Bureau. The form was dated March 1st. The compliance interview was scheduled for March 15th. And on March 12th, my family invited a buyer to tour the properties over brunch, hoping to sell the whole portfolio for a number they had not earned without me. I was invited too. They thought I was coming to pour the coffee. Visual: kitchen table, yellow linoleum, a crumpled permission slip. Auto. I was 11 the first time I understood that my hands were useful to them, in a way my voice was not. My grandmother had moved in with us the winter I turned 10, after her stroke, and her English never fluent, had retreated to the corners of her mouth like a shy animal. By the time I was 11, I was the one who called the pharmacy to refill her heart medication, who explained to the nurses that her left side hurt more than she admitted, who sat in a plastic chair at Memorial General every Tuesday for 7 months and translated blood pressure readings into the dialect of her childhood. My mother called me her little bridge. My father told his co-workers at the lumber yard that I was indispensable, that he didn't know what they would do without me. When the 8th grade class trip to the state capitol came up, the permission slip sat on the kitchen table for a week. The fee was $42. I asked my mother on a Thursday, while she was paying the electric bill. She said we would see. We never saw. The $42 went to Derek's new basketball sneakers instead. He was 13 and had never translated a single sentence at a doctor's office. He had never called a pharmacy. I did not cry about the trip in front of them. I cried in the bathroom with the fan running because my mother had said, "It's just easier when Claire handles it. Why complicate things?" She said it while stirring her coffee, not looking up, the way you note that the dishwasher is running or that the mail has come. I was useful. I was not worth $42. Visual: dining room table, a calculator, a shoebox of receipts. I was 16 when I found the $3,200 deduction. My father had bought a second rental property that fall, a duplex near the community college, and he was drowning in receipts he had shoved into a shoebox labeled taxes in black marker. The box sat on the dining room table for 3 weeks. I organized them alphabetically, then chronologically, then found the depreciation schedule he had forgotten to file for the new water heater and the partial roof repair from the October storm. $3,200. That was the exact difference between my father owing the IRS $1,200 and getting a refund of $2,000 that spring. He clapped me on the shoulder at dinner and told my mother I had a real head for business, that I was a natural. I asked if I could be added to the checking account for the properties, so I could pay the plumber directly instead of waiting 3 days for him to find his checkbook and sign every invoice. My mother reached across the table and patted my hand. "It's just easier when Claire handles it," she said. "Ow! Why complicate things?" I looked at my father. He was already talking to Derek about his batting average. The $3,200 saved the family business that year. It paid for Derek's summer baseball camp. My name did not appear on a single document. Not the LC filing, not the bank account, not the property deed. I was useful. I was not worth a signature. Visual, a college diploma, a lease agreement, a set of brass keys. I graduated from state at 22 with a degree in accounting and an offer from a mid-sized firm in the city, 40 minutes north, by bus. The same week, my father had a minor heart attack. Nothing catastrophic, a warning, the doctor said, but he needed to reduce stress and avoid heavy lifting and late night. My mother called me into the kitchen the Sunday after his release and said the properties needed a manager, just for now, just until my father was back on his feet and feeling like himself again. Derek was 24, working at a car dealership across town, building his sales career. As my mother put it, her voice lifting on the word career like it was a fragile thing that needed protection. He was too busy. I was not too busy. I was available. That was the word she used. Available. As if I were a conference room. As if I had no edges. I moved back into my childhood bedroom, the one with the faded wallpaper and the desk that still had my high school graduation program in the drawer. I took the bus 40 minutes each way to my accounting job and handled the rentals at night, sitting on the edge of my bed with a laptop that overheated and a phone that rang until 11. I found tenants. I negotiated leases. I fixed the garbage disposal in Unit 2 with a YouTube video and a wrench I bought myself because the maintenance budget my father set was imaginary. For 8 years, this was the rhythm. 8 years. I want you to hold that number. 2,920 days, more or less, of being the one who answered the phone when a pipe burst at 2 in the morning, who drove to the properties in snowstorms to salt the walkways because my father couldn't lift the bags, who learned the city housing codes by heart because no one else would read them. The personal cost was not the labor I could do in my sleep. By year 3, the cost was the life I did not build while I was oiling the machine. Visual, a studio apartment listing, a red pen crossing out a date. At 25, I had saved $6,000 and found a studio apartment 3 blocks from my office, with a window that faced east and a radiator that clanked but worked. I gave notice at home. Now, I packed 2 suitcases. My mother cried. Not hard, not with noise, just enough to make the air in the kitchen feel heavy and wet, the way it feels before a summer storm. She said my father still wasn't strong enough to handle the stress of new tenants, that Derek was up for a promotion at the dealership and couldn't be distracted by plumbing emergencies, that the current tenants only renewed their leases because they trusted me, that I was the only one who knew the QuickBooks password and the name of the reliable handyman and the exact day the city inspector liked to visit. She did not say, "Please stay." I said, "Not at all, count." She said, "It's just easier when Claire handles it. I unpacked my suitcases. The studio went to a paralegal named Jennifer who worked 2 floors above me. I watched her carry plants into the building from the bus window. I stayed for 3 more years. At 28, I met someone. His name was Ethan. He taught high school history and laughed at my jokes about accelerated depreciation, a laugh that made other people in the restaurant turn to look. We dated for 11 months. He had a small house with a porch swing and a cat that tolerated me. He wanted me to move in with him after the school year ended. I wanted to. But the March tax filings were due, and Unit 4 had a mold issue that required daily check-ins with the remediation company because my father had chosen the cheapest bid. My mother had started introducing Ethan as Claire's friend from work, even after I corrected her twice at Sunday dinner. Ethan asked me once directly why my brother's name was on the LLC paperwork when I was the one who handled every crisis. I did not have an answer that sounded sane outside my own head. I said I was helping the family. He looked at me for a long time. He left after 13 months. Not dramatically. No slammed doors. He just stopped asking me to choose him. I did not blame him. Then you? In shocks? I had not chosen him. I had chosen the lease agreements, the mold remediation, the family that needed me to be available. For 8 years. Visual. A city clerk's office. A stack of pamphlets. The mechanism was born in a city council meeting I attended alone on a Tuesday night in February. I was 31. Nanny. I am orange. The city had passed a new rental housing ordinance, effective January 1st, requiring every licensed rental property to have a designated property manager who held a current certification from the City Housing Bureau. The certification required 40 hours of coursework, a proctored exam, and a background check. Derek had never taken it. He had never intended to. I had taken the exam 6 years prior, after a tenant in Unit 3 filed a complaint about a code violation, and I realized I needed legal standing to represent the property in housing court. I passed on the first attempt. My certification number was CM 2018 4451. I was the only person in my family who could legally manage the properties under the new ordinance. The city clerk explained that existing licenses would expire on March 15th, unless renewed with the certified I sat in the back row with a notepad and wrote down every deadline. Derek sat at home watching a basketball game. My mother had asked me to go because, as she said, I was the one who understood that kind of thing. She did not ask what the ordinance meant. She assumed I would handle it. He was correct. But I understood something else that night. The ordinance created a paper trail. It required the city to keep a public record of the designated manager, and it allowed any certified manager to file a change of designation with 30 days' notice, provided they could demonstrate they had been performing the duties. I had 8 years of leases, repair invoices, and tax filings with my handwriting on them. I had a lever. It was boring. It was legal. It was mine. Visual. A for sale sign. A family dinner table set with wine glasses. The erasure did not happen all at once. It accrued like interest on a debt no one intended to pay. In January of my 32nd year, my parents called a family meeting to discuss selling the portfolio. A developer was buying up properties near the college to build a mixed-use complex with retail on the ground floor. The offer could clear $400,000 after the mortgage was settled. My father opened a bottle of Cabernet he had been saving for a special occasion, wine that came in a box, inside a box. Derek talked about his vision for the sale, how he had cultivated the relationship with the buyer's representative at the dealership, how his natural business acumen had positioned the family for this windfall. He spoke for 12 minutes without mentioning a single tenant name, a single repair cost, or the fact that the roof on Unit 2 was 3 years past its warranty. My mother nodded after every sentence, her eyes bright with a pride I recognized because I had seen it directed at him my whole life, and never at me. I sat at the end of the table with a pen in my hand, waiting for someone to ask me about the actual numbers. The cap rate, the deferred maintenance on Unit 2, that would come up in inspection and knock $15,000 off the asking price. The fact that I had kept the books showing a net operating income that made the $400,000 figure plausible. That I had done the math, while Derek was learning to golf. No one asked. When I finally spoke, my father interrupted me to ask Derek to pass the potatoes. The potatoes were closer to me. I passed them anyway. Visual. A bank lobby. A glass-walled conference room. The second incident happened 2 weeks later. My mother asked me to accompany Derek to the bank to help him organize the financials for the buyer's review. She said it casually, while folding laundry, as if she were asking me to pick up milk. I brought my laptop, my external drive, and a binder of records I had maintained for 8 years, every receipt pressed flat, every lease annotated in the margins, with tenant preferences and pet policies. The loan officer, a woman named Barbara with silver hair and a charcoal suit, asked Derek about the occupancy rate. Derek hesitated. I know. He looked at me. I answered, 94% average over the last 3 years, with detailed tenant histories and credit checks available for review. Barbara turned to me, genuinely impressed, and asked if I was the property manager. Derek laughed. It was a sound I knew well, the laugh he used when he was uncomfortable and wanted to reclaim the room. He said I was his assistant, that I helped out with the paperwork, that he was the managing member, but he liked to keep his sister busy. He said it like a joke between men. Barbara did not laugh. She looked at me for 1 second longer than was polite. I looked at the binder. I had color-coded the tenant payment histories by year. I had highlighted the $12,000 in personal funds I had advanced to cover the mortgage during the 4-month vacancy in Unit 4 in 2021, the months Derek had been in Cancun. I had not listed those advances as loans. I had listed them as operational contributions in the ledger, language that made them sound voluntary. Derek signed the bank disclosure forms with a pen I had brought from my apartment. My name appeared nowhere on the documents, not even as a witness. Barbara handed him her business card. No, yon B. She did not hand me one. I drove home in silence, while Derek talked about the boat he might buy with his share, a 22-foot center console he had already picked out online. I stared at the road and thought about the city ordinance. I thought about my certification number. 2018 4450 1 I thought about how easy it would be to file a single form with a notary public and a postage stamp. How easy and how permanent. Visual. A post office counter. A notary stamp pressing into paper. I filed the form on February 26. I took a personal day from work, the first one I had used in 14 months. I told no one, not my mother, not Derek, not the colleague who covered my desk. I drove to the city clerk's office with a folder of proof, 8 years of leases with my signature as the contact party, repair invoices paid from my personal account, tax filings prepared by my hand, and my certification card laminated in plastic. The clerk was a man named Harold, with reading glasses on a chain and a cough that rattled in his chest. He reviewed the documents for 11 minutes without speaking. He said the change of designated manager would be processed within 5 business days, and the new license would be mailed to the address on file. I gave him my apartment address, not the family house on Birch Street. He did not ask why. He stamped the form with a sound like a door closing and handed me a carbon copy. I paid the $40 filing fee with my own debit card. I kept the receipt. I had already mailed the form. It was sitting in a file downtown, waiting. Then I went to the post office and sent a certified letter to the buyer's attorney, Patricia Vance, whose name I had found on the developer's website under Acquisitions Team. The letter was 1 page, single-spaced, with no greeting beyond the formal address. It stated that as of March 1st, the designated property manager of record for Hawthorne Family Properties, LLC, had changed pursuant to City Ordinance 14B, and that any sale, inspection, or transfer of management rights required my signature and physical presence by city law. I did not threaten. I did not plead. I did not explain my reasons. I stated facts in the flattest language I knew, the language of accountants and clerks. I kept the certified mail receipt with its tracking number. I kept the stamped copy of the filing. I kept the $40 receipt in an envelope labeled HFP. Administrative. I went home and made a cup of tea and sat on my couch and waited for March 12th. The family did not know. They were planning the brunch menu. They were planning the sale. They were planning to pour the coffee and hand me the cream. No ducks in or bowl. Visual. A brunch table, silver coffee pots, a folder with a gold developer's logo. March 12th arrived cold and bright. A morning that felt like a promise no one asked for. My mother had rented the community room at the golf club because she said it impressed buyers, gave them a sense of the lifestyle they were buying into, leisure that came from passive income. There were white tablecloths and a silver coffee service and a platter of pastries from the bakery Derek liked, the one that charged $6 for a croissant. I arrived at 10:45, wearing a navy dress I had bought for a job interview 3 years ago, and never worn because my mother had called that morning to say my father was having a bad day, and could I please check the furnace in Unit 3. My mother kissed my cheek and told me to make sure the cream was fresh, and to set out the sugar cubes, not the packets, because Richard Holt was a man who noticed details. Derek wore a navy suit that cost more than my monthly rent, the suit he had bought with the bonus from his dealership after I had covered the property taxes that December. My father stood by the window practicing his handshake in the glass reflection, his palm opening and closing like a fish gasping. The buyer arrived at 11 o'clock exactly. His name was Richard Holt. He was 60, maybe 65, with a tan that looked expensive and a watch that caught the light and held it like a threat. He brought his attorney, Patricia Vance, a black woman in a burgundy blazer who carried a leather folio and did not smile when she shook Derek's hand. She looked at me as she entered the room. I was standing by the coffee station. Now, I nodded. Now. She nodded back. It was a small movement, barely visible, but it held weight I could feel in my collarbone. My mother poured the coffee into china cups. I did not touch the pot. I did not move to help her. Derek launched into his presentation, a slideshow on a laptop I configured for him the night before. The slides I had designed with the financial charts I had compiled from 8 years of data. He talked about cash flow. He talked about appreciation. He talked about his hands-on management style and his personal relationships with the tenants. He had met 3 tenants in 8 years. I had met all of them. My mother beamed at him like he was a photograph she had always wanted to frame. My father nodded along, his eyes watery with pride or wine. Patricia Vance took notes with a fountain pen that scratched against the paper. She asked one question while Derek was mid-sentence about projected yields. Who holds the current property management certification for the portfolio? Derek waved his hand as if brushing away a fly. I oversee all of that, he said. My sister helps with the paperwork, but I'm the managing member on every document. Patricia Vance stopped writing. She looked at me again, her eyes level and calm. I was still holding my manila envelope. My fingers were not shaking. Visual: a china cup, a fountain pen resting on a legal notepad. Derek's answer hung in the air like smoke from a blown candle. Richard Holt smiled, a smile that meant he was ready to move to numbers, to cap rates and closing dates, the part of the meeting where men like him felt most at home. My mother filled the silence before it could become awkward. It's just easier when Claire handles it, she said, turning to Richard with a hostess's grace, as if she were explaining why the napkins matched the curtains or why the flowers were white. She's been doing the day-to-day for... What? 8 years now? She laughed, a sound like silverware settling. We always say she's the engine, and Derek is the steering wheel. My father chuckled into his coffee. Derek straightened his tie and let the metaphor sit there, let it grow roots in the room. Richard Holt looked at me with a new expression, the look of a man who has just been told where the bathroom is, a brief acknowledgement before returning to the important people. Patricia Vance did not look at me. She looked at Derek with the flat patience of someone who has heard this particular lie before. Mr. Horn, she said, her voice even and unhurried, are you stating that you personally hold the city property management certification required under Ordinance 14B? Derek's smile faltered for half a second, a crack in the glaze. I hold the management title, he said. The certification is a formality. My sister took the course, but I run the business. I make the decisions. My mother touched Richard Holt's arm, a gesture of reassurance. Claire's always been thorough, she said. It's just easier when Claire handles it. Why complicate things? The phrase again. The exact words, delivered with the same casual cruelty as the day she had denied me the $42 field trip. The same dismissive music as the night she had kept me from the studio apartment. I felt them land in my sternum like a bookmark placed in a chapter I'd already read 100 times and was now ready to close. Patricia Vance closed her folio. The snap of leather was the only sound in the room for 2 full seconds. Richard Holt looked at his attorney, confused, his smile dimming. My mother was still talking about my thoroughness, my reliability, my availability, the way I never took vacations and answered my phone at midnight. She was selling my labor as a feature of the property, like a new roof or a renovated kitchen or a reliable furnace. Derek joined in, explaining that I would, of course, stay on through the transition, that I was part of the package, that the buyer would find me invaluable, that he had already factored my continued management into the pro forma. He said it without asking me. He said it as if he were offering a tool that came with the building, a washing machine or a built-in bookshelf. I set my envelope on the table. The sound was soft, paper against cloth. It was enough. Visual, a manila envelope, a hand sliding documents across white linen. "I need to correct the record," I said. My voice was level even, the same tone I used when telling a tenant that their late fee would not be waived. I had practiced the sentence in my car on the drive over, speaking it to the steering wheel until it sounded like weather, like a forecast, like something that simply was. I opened the envelope. The flap made a clean tearing sound. "Dash you." I slid the first document across the table to Patricia Vance. It was the certified copy of the change of designated manager form, filed with the City Licensing Bureau on February 26th and processed on March 1st, bearing the clerk's stamp and my signature in blue ink. "This is a certified copy of the change of designated manager form," I said, "filed with the City Licensing Bureau on February 26th and processed on March 1st. The previous designation of Derek Hawthorne was terminated by operation of Ordinance 14B, which requires the certified manager to be the designated manager of record." I slid the second document. It was my property management certification, number CM 2018, 4451, issued 6 years ago, current through next December with my photograph laminated in the corner. "This is my property management certification," I said, "number CM 2018, 1451. I sat for the exam in 2018. I passed on the first attempt. My brother has never held this certification." I slid the third document, a spreadsheet printed on green paper. "This is a ledger of operational contributions from my personal funds to Hawthorne Family Properties, LLC, over the last 8 years," I said, "totaling $12,463. None of these have been repaid. None were documented as loans in the LAC operating agreement. They were drawn from my personal savings to cover mortgage shortfalls, emergency repairs, and property tax delinquencies that occurred when the LLC account was empty." Derek laughed. It was a high, nervous sound, the laugh of a child caught in a lie he thought was too small to matter. "Claire, what is this?" he said. "Are you having some kind of episode?" My mother looked at my father, her eyes wide and wet. My father looked at the documents as if they were written in a language he had never learned to read, his mouth slightly open, his hand hovering over his chest. I did not look at any of them. I looked at Patricia Vance. She was reading the filing with a concentration that excluded the rest of the room, her finger moving down the page line by line. She turned to Richard Holt. "Now away, Mr. Nizzy? Mr. Holt," she said, her voice carrying the weight of her 15 years of practicing law. "According to the Secretary of State filing and the City Licensing Bureau records, which I verified this morning, Ms. Hawthorne has been the certified manager of record since March 1st. Mr. Hawthorne has no active property management certification on file. Under the Purchase Agreement's Representation and Warranties Clause, this constitutes a material misrepresentation in the sale disclosure. The buyer is entitled to terminate due diligence immediately." Richard Holt's face changed. The tan did not look expensive anymore. It looked like a mask that had slipped. "Derek," he said, "is this true? You told me you ran this operation personally." Derek stood up. His chair scraped the floor with a sound like a scream. "She's my sister," he said, his voice rising. "She works for me." This is a family misunderstanding. She's upset about the sale, that's all. She's emotional. Patricia Vance did not look up from the ledger. She turned a page. Ms. Hawthorne, she said, did you file this change of designation independently, without coercion? I did, I said. Did you personally perform the management duties listed in the affidavit of active management? For 8 years, I said. Every lease, every repair, every eviction notice, every tax filing, every 3 email. Phone call from a tenant with a broken pipe. My mother made a sound, not quite a word, more like air escaping a tire. My father's hand was shaking. He knocked over his coffee cup. The brown liquid spread across the white linen like a map of something breaking open. Oh. Derek was shouting now. Something about loyalty, about blood, about how I had embarrassed him in front of a client, how I had sabotaged the family. His voice was the only loud thing in the room, bouncing off the golf club walls. I did not raise mine. I did not stand. Gee. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the last document, a single sheet of plain paper. This is my resignation from all informal and formal management duties related to Hawthorne Family Properties, LLC, I said. Effective immediately. I am terminating my access to the property management software, the LLC bank account interface, and the QuickBooks files. I am also notifying the tenants that all future communications should be directed to the managing member on file, as listed with the Secretary of State. I placed it on the table next to the spreading coffee stain. Richard Holt stood up, and he did not look at Derek. He looked at me, and then at Patricia Vance, and then he picked up his own folio. I think we're done here, he said. My mother reached for my arm. I moved my chair back. Claire, she said. Claire, please. I looked at her. I looked at the coffee spreading across the table. I looked at Derek, who was still standing, his face red, his hands open and empty. I picked up my empty envelope. I walked out of the room. No one followed me. Not then. Oh, Annie. It was easier. I stopped. Visual. A laptop screen. A red login error message. I did not go home. I went to my apartment and changed into jeans and a sweatshirt and sat on my couch with a cup of tea that I let cool while I worked. Then I began the withdrawal. I changed the password on the property management software. The account was in my name, paid for with my personal credit card for the last 4 years, because Derek said the LLC couldn't afford the $89 monthly fee, and my father had agreed. I canceled the auto-renewal. I exported the tenant database to my personal external drive and deleted the master file from the shared cloud folder. I logged into the LLC bank account, which I had accessed for 8 years because I was the one who balanced the transactions and caught the errors, and I removed my authorized user status through the online portal. The bank sent an automatic notification to the primary account holder, my father, that a user had been removed and that pending transactions might be affected. I did not answer my phone. When it rang 30 minutes later, my mother's name bright on the screen. I let it ring until the voicemail picked up. I changed the outgoing message on the property line, the number I had carried in my pocket for 8 years, to a generic message directing all calls to Derek's cell phone, which he never answered before noon. Then I stopped. I had not destroyed anything. I had not hidden information they could not legally obtain. I had simply stopped holding the door open with my shoulder. The machine began to break immediately, the way a clock stops when you stop winding it. Without the software, Derek could not access the tenant contact information to schedule the inspection Richard Holt had demanded before closing, nor could he prove the occupancy rate he had claimed. Without my signature on the tax forms, the accountant could not file the LLC's quarterly return, which was due in 17 days, and which I had prepared every quarter for 8 years. Without my personal funds covering the gap between the rent collected and the mortgage due, the March auto draft bounced for the first time in 4 years, triggering a late fee of $230 and a notice of default risk from the lender. I did not cause these things. I simply stopped preventing them. I stopped oiling the machine. I do. Visual. A phone screen. 7 missed calls. A kitchen table at night with 1 lamp on. The fallout took 2 weeks to fully arrive, spreading like water, finding every crack in a floor. Richard Holt terminated the purchase agreement on March 14th, citing material misrepresentation and failure to disclose the true management structure. The developer's attorney sent a formal notice to Derek, copied to my father, outlining the discrepancies in the financial disclosures, the lack of certified management, and the $12,463 in undocumented liabilities. The bank, alerted by the bounced draft and the late fee, called the commercial loan due for review and required a full financial audit before the next payment cycle. My father left me 4 voicemails, each one louder than the last. Derek left 11, the first 3 demanding, the next 4 pleading, the last 4 consisting mostly of silence and breathing. My mother left 3 that started with "How could you do this to your father?" and ended with "We need to talk as a family." I listened to none of them past the first 30 seconds. I deleted them one by one while eating toast at my kitchen counter. The accountant, a man named Gene, who had prepared the family taxes for a decade, and who had always emailed me directly because I was the one who provided the numbers, called me on March 20th. He was not angry. He was confused in a professional way, the way a surgeon might be confused if the patient walked out mid-operation. He said he could not file the LLC return without the management fee documentation, the repair receipts, and the depreciation schedules, which had always come from me in a green folder by the 15th of the month. I told him to contact Derek. I told him Derek was the managing member. Oh, he paused. I could hear him clicking his pen. "Claire," he said, his voice dropping, "Derek doesn't know the password to the QuickBooks file. He doesn't even know which version we're running." "I know," I said. The city housing inspector called Derek directly to schedule the compliance interview he was legally required to attend as the managing member of record before the March 15th deadline. Derek did not know what a compliance interview entailed. He did not know the inspector's name was Roberto Santos. He did not know that Unit 2 had a leaking gas line the tenant had reported to me 2 months prior, which I had patched temporarily with plumber's tape because my father had refused to pay the $300 service call, saying we could wait until spring. The inspector found the leak during his routine walkthrough. He issued a notice of violation and an order to vacate until repair. The fine was $400. The repair estimate was $2,000, and the tenant threatened to withhold rent for the displacement. My father called me again, this time from the urgent care clinic. His blood pressure was 190 over 110. He said the stress was killing him, that I was killing him, that a daughter should not do this to her family. I told him to call Derek. I told him Derek was the managing member. I told him Derek would handle it. I was calm. I was unbothered. I was free. Visual, a windowsill, a potted fern with new growth, morning light. The phone calls slowed after a month, tapering like a tide going out and leaving things exposed on the sand. Then they changed. My mother called on a Tuesday in April and left a voicemail I did not return for 3 days, not out of spite, but because I was busy learning how to live without the sound of her voice in my ear. She said my father was fine. The blood pressure was managed with medication, and that they had hired a property management company to handle the rentals because Derek couldn't do it and work full-time. She said the management fees were eating into the profits, that the company charged 15% of gross rents, which was highway robbery. She said Derek was struggling at the dealership because of the stress from the sale falling through, that he had been passed over for the promotion he wanted. She did not apologize. She did not say she had been wrong. She said, "We miss you at dinner. Sunday isn't the same." I did not call back. I texted 2 days later. "I'm glad he's well. Take care." That was all. She did not text again. Text again. Visual, a smartphone, 3 gray text bubbles on a screen. My father texted me in May. Oh, it was the first time he had texted me in 3 years, since he had sent me a picture of a bird in the backyard that I had never asked for. The message was 3 sentences, written in the slow, punctuated style of a man who still treats texting like a telegram. I didn't know it was that bad. I thought you were helping because you wanted to. I should have asked. I read it, sitting on my porch in the evening, the concrete still warm from the day. I read it 3 times. It was not an apology. It was a flicker, a small light in a dark room, enough to see the outline of something broken, but not enough to mend it, not enough to make it whole. I did not reply that day. I let the words sit with me. I replied the next morning while my coffee brewed. "Thank you for saying that." He did not write back. I did not expect him to. Some doors, once opened, only show you the distance between where you are and where you used to be. Visual, a small apartment, a bookshelf with 12 books, a blue mug door was used. I live in a 1-bedroom now, 10 blocks from the office where I still work as an accountant, where I was promoted to senior associate in March because I could finally stay late without a tenant calling about a clogged drain. I have a fern on the windowsill that I water on Saturdays, and it has grown 3 new fronds since I bought it in April. I have a blue mug that I bought with my first paycheck, after the reckoning, the first thing I had ever purchased just because I liked the color, not because it was on sale or because someone else needed it. I wake up early without an alarm. I make coffee in the blue mug. I read the newspaper at my small table without checking my phone for tenant emergencies or ALC bank alerts. On Sundays, I go to the farmer's market, 3 streets over, and buy vegetables I have never cooked before, eggplant and fennel and strange mushrooms. And I burn them sometimes, and I eat them anyway, because they are mine and because no one is watching. I am learning to be alone without being lonely. It is slow. It is uneven. It is enough. My name is Claire. Hey, I am 34.